Well, guys, today I have a message titled, The Maturity to Give Thanks. The Maturity to Give Thanks. You know, it sounds kind of weird. You're like, wait, well, why would you say maturity? Am I immature if I don't give thanks? Yeah, I'm just messing with you. But listen to what it says. Paul writes this in 1 Corinthians 4:20. And this is where this is coming from. Can I get that verse up? Brothers, do not be children in your thinking. We have to understand as a people that we can actually grow in years. We can live year after year, be in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 20s, 30s, 80s even. And you have to understand that you can grow in years, but yet your thinking can still be very childish. Your thinking can be very immature. And what Paul is writing here is he says, be infants in evil, meaning that when it comes to your level of understanding with worldly things, ungodly things, wicked things, fleshly things, he's saying, hey, listen, be very immature in those things. But he goes on to say, but in your thinking, be mature. And I want to talk to you about that today, about taking on a heart and a mind of maturity. See, gratitude is the mark of the mature. Let me say that again for those of you that are taking notes. That gratitude, being thankful, it is the mark of those who are mature. See, mature people have mastered their emotions and they master their reactions to bad news and also to unexpected delays. See, many times we don't realize that our immaturity, when something's taking too long, what do? We start to complain. We start to get a bad attitude. We start to feel like we're a victim, like, oh man, like nothing ever works out for me. They're always blessed and I'm not blessed. You know, something doesn't, happen the way that you thought it would happen. Some people, when we have not grown, when we are not in this area of thinking as mature people, we resort to complaining. We resort to negativity and kind of a ho-hum spirit. Man, we end up becoming the church of, what's that guy, Eeyore? We take on an Eeyore spirit. We're just like, oh man, it's like, and listen, nobody's inspired with that. Nobody's inspired with that. When it comes to being mature in our thinking and having gratitude in our heart, I have a couple quotes I want to share. Zig Ziglar says this. He says, you'll never see a happy, ungrateful person. Isn't that the truth? You'll never see a happy, ungrateful person. William Arthur Ward goes on to say this. He says, the pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. The realist adjusts the sails. I want you to understand, church, that if you are a believer in Jesus Christ, if you are born again, that you are not powerless. That you are not powerless to change through the power of the Holy Spirit, that you are not powerless when you face difficult circumstances. And often what we do not realize is that in life, there are going to be challenges coming our way. You are going to face winds. You are going to face opposition. And what he's saying here, and I love this quote because for many people, we feel like life is getting the best of us, that we're in this negative place because there's winds of opposition. But by the Holy Spirit, if you will get past yourself, if I will get past myself, I realize that the wind is there for me to turn and to allow the wind of the Holy Spirit to become the motivator and the power behind me that's moving me in a direction. Often in my life, when I look back and I see that I've been complaining and negativity has taken root in my heart, often what I've seen in hindsight is that the reason the wind was at my face is that I was resisting the very things that God was trying to do in me. He was trying to mature me. He was trying to grow me. And I'm like, yeah, but I got to have my way and it's got to be in my timing. And I asked for this and how come it's not happening? And we're pushing and we're fighting against the wind when God is saying, would you just turn and let it be the thing that moves you forward? What am I asking you to move forward into today? Into a life that's yielded to the Spirit of God, empowered by the Spirit of God, a life that is not a life of complaining and a negative outlook. See, Paul also writes in Philippians chapter 2, verse 14. He says, do all things without what? Without complaining and disputing. Why is this relevant to us today? Because many of you are going to be around family members this weekend or this week. And you're going to be around family members through the next month as Christmas comes and as New Year's Day comes. You are going to see that family members are going to kind of rub you, wrong. They're going to bring up conversations about politics. They're going to bring up Israel. They're going to bring up this. They're going to bring up that. And some of you, it's going to get a rise out of you if you're not careful. And even many of you will be tempted, as maybe even myself will be tempted at times, to take on negative mindsets when it comes to, well, man, I just really wish that we could have done more. I wish we had more. How come those people, it seems like they're always blessed and we're not? And you can get your eyes off of what God is doing and you're going to miss out on the blessings of this season. And I remember for the longest time, I thought that being negative or being a person who complains, I thought that it was harmless. I thought to myself, like, oh, it's not really that big of a deal. I'm just really bugged right now. I'm just irritated with life. I'm irritated with people. I'm irritated with our employees. I'm irritated. How many of you guys ever find yourself just being irritated? Yeah, there's hands everywhere. And I want you to know that being negative and complaining, it is not harmless. It's actually very harmful. You know, they did studies at Stanford University, and what they found is that when people begin to perpetually complain about things, a negative outlook, you know, is your mode of operation. What they found is that the hippocampus, which is part of your brain, it actually begins to shrink. And so what happens is in that area, that area is actually designed to help you problem solve, and it's actually designed to help you think in an intelligent way. So if you're complaining, you may not realize you're actually hurting yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally because you're shrinking that part. So instead of being able to have clear thought and go, you know what, I can solve this problem, your complaining is actually shrinking that down and you're not able to see the solutions. You only see problems. And also what they found is that over time, if you live with that being something that happens over and over, I'm just a negative Nelly, I'm just an Eeyore, they found that for many people, that area, the hippocampus, is the part that's damaged in people that have Alzheimer's disease. And so don't think that it's not harmless or harmful to be negative and be complaining. It actually does impact your life. And so I want to help you walk through this today because complaining is a big part of our culture, is it not? We even bond socially over complaining. This is what's kind of wild if you think about it. You know, you get in an elevator and somebody's there, instead of going, hey, how's your day going? And they go, oh, it's amazing, man. If they do that, you're going, something's weird. Something's off with this person. But it's quite normal for somebody to go, man, this elevator's really taking forever, isn't it? Man, I remember before, these things just 30 seconds up and down. Man, now it's like this big process, and I got to use this card. And you're like, yeah, man, I feel you. I know what you're talking about. You're at work, and man, these gas prices are terrible. I haven't had a raise in months, you know, and you're like, yeah, man, I kind of feel the same way. We actually bond over negativity. We bond over complaining. And I want you to know that God wants that to change about us. Because in reality, you may feel good for a moment as you're expressing yourself and you're just kind of letting some pressure out. But understand this, that the end result is this, is that nobody is ever inspired by a complainer. Nobody's inspired by a complainer. As a matter of fact, you suck the air out of the room and you damage the moment. And I was thinking about that. You know, I coached football for about 10 years, you know, from little guys all the way through high school. And here's the thing that I've realized is that the kids right before the game, they need to get hyped, man. So they get in a circle, they got their chant, and they're like, yo, and they're all excited. We're going to destroy them, you know, rip their heads off and send them back to their mom in the mail. I don't know what they're saying. But anyways, they're getting pumped up, right? Can you imagine if I sent the most negative person, the complainer, like, all right, man, get in there, get them hyped up. He's like, we're the smallest, we're the slowest, our plans are trash, man, our uniforms are ugly. It's way too cold to even be playing out here, man. And my mom was yelling at me the whole time. Come on, guys, on the count of 3, let's go get them. And hopefully we don't lose as bad as last week. 1, 2, I mean, come on, like that doesn't make sense. But we have Christians that are the type of people that we are supposed to be the representatives of God's goodness and to have hope in our hearts and joy in our hearts, but yet we many times don't realize that we are trying to be the hype person and a representative of a good God, but yet we hang on to our negativity and our complaining. And that's what they remember you for. So really, in some ways, you've been called to inspire and impact the world around you, but that's exactly what we're not doing. So I want to challenge you with that today. I want to talk to you, and I want to give you 3 things when it comes to the maturity to give thanks. Because mature people learn to handle disappointment and not have to vocalize it. Mature people learn how to be patient and wait upon the Lord so our strength is renewed without having to vocalize negativity or tell everybody that we're waiting. There's something that shifts inside of our hearts where we say, God, I don't see what's ahead, but I trust you. And so I'm going to give you 3 things. Number 1 is this today, is that we must enter with thanksgiving. We must enter every situation, enter every season with thanksgiving. It says this in Psalm 104, verse that's very familiar. It says, enter into his gates. Capital H means his, speaking of God. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. Be thankful to him and bless his name. I just love that. Psalm 103:1 also says this. It says, bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. So I want to pose a question to you today that I think is worth asking. And it's this. What if blessing God became our passion instead of the other way around? Let me say that one more time. What if blessing God became our passion instead of the other way around? See, most of us are very, very good at coming to God and saying, God, would you bless me? We show up with an empty basket going, God, look, I'm all out of resources. God, look, my marriage is failing. God, I don't have any opportunities. I got rejected from school. Could you help me? And listen, he wants to and he will. But think about this. What if your life changed where you said, you know what, I'm going to enter into his presence daily. I'm going to enter into his presence every single week, and I'm going to have a basket full of blessing for him. I'm coming to bless his socks off instead of just going, hey, would you bless me? Coming in with the hand out. No, I'm coming in with blessing for my God every single morning. I'm going to come in and say, God, there is no God like you. God, you are amazing. God, you are powerful. God, you are strong. God, you have shown yourself good. I thank you that you healed my wife from an incurable cancer. God, I thank you that my kids are serving God. God, I thank you that we get to be in the position that we are, loving this church, leading this church. God, I thank you that we have health. I thank you that I've got great eyesight. I can breathe today. God, I thank you that my knees are strong. I thank you that my shoulders are strong. Whatever it is that you can do to bless him, you enter his presence with thanksgiving. You enter his courts with praise. Can you see how that counteracts a complaining spirit? See, if all I'm focused on is the basket that's not full, then of course I can complain. I'm like, man, I'm hungry. Oh man, how am I going to pay my bills? Oh, and you only come in to petition, to ask, but man, think about the difference if we just came in to bless our Father, to just bless him. Something changes because you're on task. Your motivation now is something that's different. You are coming in to bless, not only to be blessed. But here's the beauty, is as you pour out on him, he pours into us. Come on, that is good news, church. That is good news. So we have to be thankful and understand that it doesn't come naturally. Complaining does, right? But we've got to be intentional about blessing our Father. Here's the second thing, is that you have to consider what you magnify. Consider what you magnify. Psalm 69, verse 30 says this. I will praise the name of God with a song, and I will do what? I will magnify him with thanksgiving. See, many of us, we have the mindset of magnifying our problems. What does a magnifying glass do? You put it on it and whoop, it just gets really big, right? And actually bigger than it really is. The thing with God is that God is bigger than we can ever make him. But our problems often, we see them as giants because we magnify the problem. We magnify the lack. We magnify the trouble. It's like, we're like, oh man. And it's like, wait, let me see that a little closer. Because many of us, because of some issues that we got in our heart, we are drawn to negativity. We like to see the issues. And God is saying, don't do that. He's saying, magnify me through thanksgiving. Begin to thank me before you even see the problem. Begin to say, as I pray, God, you know what? Whatever I'm going to face today, I just trust that you're bigger than this. God, whatever challenges that are going to come my way today, even before I leave the house, I surrender this day to you because I know that you're bigger. I know that you're the God that can do the impossible. So I'm going to trust you. Consider the things that you're magnifying, church. And this is the thought for those of you that are taking notes today, is that complaining gives power to things that are inferior to God. Complaining gives power to things that are inferior to God. You may not realize that, but the second you open your mouth and you start to complain, you're giving power to that thing. And you may not say this with your mouth, but your heart is saying this. This problem, this thing that I'm facing right now, I believe that it's more powerful than the God that I serve. And so many of us, we're giving power to things that are inferior, things that undermine our faith. We're giving power to things that are inferior. And what do? They undermine our view of God's goodness. It's like, well, he came through one time, but he hasn't now. I don't know what's going on. It's like you just gave power to something. Maybe you're not realizing that. Complaining gives power to something inferior that questions God's timing and his faithfulness. So be careful with that. Be careful when the things that come out of your mouth, because you are potentially giving power to something that is inferior to our mighty God. You know, one time I was giving power to something inferior. Veronica and I, we were on a ministry trip to Alabama. And we had this person in our group that just had to have coffee from this specific coffee place. And I'm going to leave them nameless because you don't know them anyways. And they were like, we've got to go to this place. I heard this place is awesome. And I'm pretty punctual, and I'm usually pretty good at timing things out. And I was like, we're going to be late. We're not going to catch our flight. And this person said, yeah, no, it'll be fast. Well, you know what? It took longer than they thought. And then, of course, the apologies come. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's like, well, it's already done. You know, now I'm about to bust an attitude. You know, it's like frustrated. So we get to the airport. We drop off the rental car, got our luggage. We're like running. And we get there, and we're like, yes, we didn't miss the flight. But then they inform us, well, you got here in time for the flight, but you missed the bag check-in by 10 minutes. And that sucker that was with us, they had a carry-on, so they got to get on the plane. And Veronica and I were like, well, what do we do? They're like, well, you're going to have to come back tomorrow because this was the last flight leaving to California. We're like, what? So now I'm getting a little irritated. I'm like, come on, man, all over a cup of coffee. Now we're inconvenienced, and now we're over here, and this is not working out. So we got our bags. We go back out. We rent a car. We have to rent another room. We have to stay another day, and I was kind of wanting to get home. So they said, well, come back tomorrow at 9 a.m., and we should be able to get you guys home. We get there at 9 a.m., or actually early enough for us to check in our bags. We're there a little extra early this time. Yeah, take the rental car back, do the whole thing again. We go up and the person goes, oh, yeah, well, hey, good news is we can get one of you home. We got one ticket. We're like, what is wrong with Alabama, man? Like, I like this state, but I don't like it that much. And why are we sticking around here? And I said, well, what do we do? And they go, well, you can come back. We have room on a 6 o'clock flight. So there we go with our bags, back out there, rent another car for the day, and repeat the whole thing. It was like we're living Groundhog's Day, but like 5 days in one day, Super irritating. And I remember this thought. Pastor Diego Mesa from Abundant Living Church, he said this about 20 years ago. He said, could it be that when you are facing delays and opposition, that God is allowing inconvenience into your life for an upgrade? And that stuck with me. It stuck with me. And it was in that moment, I was like, you know what? God is doing something. And I didn't realize it because my negativity and the fact that I was being inconvenienced, it was really bothering me. You were kind of cool about it. She's like, well, look, and she really helped me understand, well, our vacation got extended because we were there on ministry, but then it turned into a vacation. We got to go see the zoo there. We got to hang out. I got to hang out with my girl for an extra day and a half. And I realized that, wow, the enemy was trying to steal a blessing that God was bringing our way. Who knows? Something could have happened if we were on one of those flights. Something could have happened if we weren't at where we needed to be at that moment. And I want you to understand that you have to be careful what you're magnifying in this lifetime. That many times you're magnifying the negative aspect of it, but yet God is working behind the scenes, and he is doing great things on our behalf, right? Because he may allow that inconvenience, that delay, because he's setting you up for an upgrade. Come on, guys, that is a good word. Here's the third thing that I want to share with you today. And the third thing is this, is that you have to return with thanksgiving. So we enter every situation, we enter every day with thanksgiving, right, in our hearts. I'm not coming only to be blessed. I'm going to bless the name of my Lord. I'm going to bless the name of my God. I'm coming with something, okay, to give. And I'm going to be careful what I magnify in my life, but also I'm going to return with thanksgiving. I'm going to return with thanksgiving. There's a story in Luke chapter 17, and it's really interesting as you read through the story because I think it can be a good representation of many of our hearts if we're not careful. And so if you would go with me to Luke chapter 17. It says, now it happened as he went to Jerusalem that he passed through the midst of Samaria and Galilee. So this is Jesus, okay? He's on the move, okay? He's on the move. and he's heading through this area. And it says and so understand that Samaria, these are not Jews, okay? These are not his people necessarily. They were kind of a mixed race, Jewish and other things. And in some ways they were looked down upon. It says, then as he entered a certain village, there met him 10 men who were lepers, who stood afar off. Why would they stand afar off? Because whenever you had leprosy in those days, when you went before the priest and he said, hey, you've got leprosy, you were banished. You were exiled out into the wilderness. You could only be around people that had your same condition. And not only that, it was demanded of you that if you had leprosy, that you would have to yell. Anytime you saw somebody coming near, you'd have to say, unclean, unclean. And so you had to declare the fact that you were unclean, that you were broken, that you had something wrong, okay? And so understand, that's why it says that they stood afar off. It's like, Jesus, don't come. We're following the rules here. But listen to what happens. It says, and they lifted up their voices and said, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. Okay, they've got a problem, and they're talking to the one that has the solution. But let's continue on with verse 14. It says, so when he saw them, he said to them, go, show yourself to the priest. Do you notice he didn't go and touch them? He didn't call them to him. He just said, hey, go show yourself to the priest. And it says, and so it was that they went. So they're like, oh, well, he said to go, let's go. And it said, and they were what? Cleansed. There was a miracle that happened just at the word of the Lord to them. But something happens, and I want to continue in verse 15 because I want you to see something. It says, and one of them, when he saw that he was healed, so here they are before the priest, and he goes, oh my gosh, my leprosy is gone. Like this means that he gets his life back. But guys, this is the day like we had just, 3 weeks ago where, she's declared cancer free. We're like, oh my gosh, like a miracle's happened. Like oh man, this is incredible. Well, this is what they're experiencing. And listen to this though. When he saw that he was healed, what did he do? He returned. And with a loud voice, he glorified God and fell down on his face at his feet, capital H, meaning Jesus. He falls down before him, giving him what? Thanks. And he was a Samaritan. This was a man that shouldn't have been healed. He was the least likely, and because of Jesus, he became the most likely. And guys, the same thing happens for you and I. Some of you grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. Some of you have experienced things that you shouldn't be able to. You're like, man, I have a job that I'm not even qualified for. I never dreamed that I would have this kind of income. I never dreamed I would have these kind of opportunities. But because of Jesus, you were the least likely and now have become the most likely. Come on. And that's what's happening here. And this guy realizes this. And so what does he do? He comes back and he just falls before Jesus and starts to glorify him and give him thanks. And listen to Jesus' response. So Jesus answered and said, were there not 10 cleansed? But where are the 9? And I believe that that's a question to you and I. See, we live in an incredible nation. And every day that I wake up, I realize, wow, I could have been born somewhere else. But I was born in this beautiful nation called America. With all the privileges, the roads that are somewhat smooth, the high gas prices, but yet I drive a vehicle that I chose. It's not just a matter of having a vehicle. Most of us in this room got to choose what you have. I remember the days where I was like, man, having a car, I'm just happy to have a bike. Come on. Or my skateboard or whatever. And you can see that in the generations today, that the young people, and not just the young people, those of us who are older, we've lost sight of the fact that God has blessed us beyond measure. That we don't just have a house, we live where we want to live. We figure out, what do I qualify for? And we live at the highest level of whatever we qualify for. We don't go and, you qualify for X amount of dollars on a new car. Okay, well, we spend as much as we can that fits the budget. Not, it's something that has 4 wheels and starts every day. That's not most people, some people. But the reality is this, is that many of us have been blessed, and instead of coming back, instead of returning in thanksgiving, we've allowed the blessings to carry us away. Making it real. Some of us, when we first got saved, we raised our hand and man, we just felt the presence of God like just hit us. And we knew what it was to be forgiven. And the tears flowed. And you were like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know God could be this good. I didn't even know he was real. And I experienced his touch in that church service, or when that person prayed for me on the streets. Like I never knew. And your eyes were open to God's goodness. And then he starts to bless us. Like I said, when you were the least likely, now you're the most likely. That you don't have the education, but yet you have this incredible job. That you weren't the most talented or even the first in line, but God, somehow, some way, others got laid off and boom, you got moved to the front. That his favor has been upon you. And so then we start to amass these things and blessings from God. And then all of a sudden, guys, listen, I've been in church too long to not know the reality of all this. Then people start getting blessed, and all of a sudden they've got money in the bank account, and all of a sudden they've got a new home, and now they've got a boat, and now they've got a motorhome, and I got to use that. Well, when do I use it? When I'm not working. And we forget to return. Come on, I'm keeping it real with you today. We forget to return. We can't set aside a day to worship our God. It's like, oh, well, I got to go to Disneyland. I got to get, use out of my past. I got to do this and that. And, God will understand because God's everywhere and he's with me. But are we willing to return in a place of honor and thanksgiving and saying, God, this is going to cost me something because I want to be in Anaheim. I want to be out on the river. God, I want to be over in Glamis. God, I want to be somewhere else. I want to be doing that. That's what I want to do. But I am not going to be like the ones who got blessed and stayed away. I'm going to be like the one that returned. I'm going to be the one that said, yeah, come on, that came back and fell before God and say, I'm not going to miss out on my day to worship you. And I'll plan whatever I got to plan after. If I only got 3 hours and that's all I got. But guys, listen, this is really important that we get this. That if you are going to be a person that beats complaining, that you're mature in your thinking, you're going to have to enter his presence in his courts with praise and thanksgiving. You're going to have to be very on top of what it is that you're magnifying in your life, because the enemy is going to keep putting negativity in front of you, disappointments, frustrations in front of you all day long. And you're just like, you know what? I'm not going to magnify that. I'm going to magnify God. He's going to see me through this. Yeah, I feel uncomfortable right now, but it's only for a moment, because God could be right now inconveniencing me for an upgrade. But also, we must return. Don't let your blessings, don't let the privileges of living in this amazing place carry you off. We become a people that are surrendered and always remember where we came from. In my life, I look at it and go, man, like I am the least likely. I was born to my mom got pregnant with me out of wedlock. She was only 17 years old. And she shares stories, and she said, it was really embarrassing to be pregnant in those days. She got kicked out of school, and she had to take the little yellow bus because she wanted to finish high school. She'd have to take the yellow bus to come pick her up and take her to this other school with girls because they didn't want that to be the standard. It's different times. But she powered through that and embraced that. And here I stand today because my mom didn't abort me. My mom didn't see me as an inconvenience. And she loved me, and my mom and dad eventually would marry and raise me in the house of the Lord as they got saved. My dad was instantly, when he gave his life to Jesus, was instantly freed from addiction. Radically saved. I've got a lot to be thankful for. And I'm sure you've got a lot to be thankful for today. And will we magnify that? Will we put that at the forefront of our mind? Many of you in this place are the least likely, but man, God has done something in you. Whew. And you are now the most likely. You are the number one candidate to be used by him for his glory. Not because of you, not because of me, but because of him.